Hey folks, Piano Man Steve Lungrin here with the Piano Man Approach online course, pianomanapproach.com. Thanks for joining me today. Today's Free Lesson Friday is we're going to be looking at a rhythm pattern for what I call driving country music. And when I say driving country music, it's basically just kind of a special brand of country. And by the way, this phenomenon does exist in songs that you wouldn't necessarily call country, but it's most commonly found in country. But it's a kind of a rhythmic structure that's got sort of a cowboy culture musical root behind it. Kind of the first ones that I remember really kind of following this kind of thing goes all the way back to like the Singing Cowboys of Gene Autry, but kind of got popular. There's a lot of it in that outlaw movement with like Merle Haggard and Waylon Jennings and Willie Nelson and those guys, Johnny Cash. But it's been applicable to a lot of country flavored songs with a driving beat throughout the decades. And I'm going to show some examples here after I show you the rhythm pattern that go all the way into the 2000s. So, and I'm sure there's some being done right now. But I don't follow the country music scene enough to know for sure who's doing it, but I'm sure that it hasn't gone away. So anyway, so here's what we want to do. It kind of sounds like this. And an alternative sounds like this. And it can be done at a number of different tempos, tends to be relatively upbeat, but it can be done at a slower tempo. The more important thing is that it's a song where you really feel that 1, 2, 3, boom, boom happening underneath it, and it kind of drives along. So what we want to do is we want to start with what I call my essential country feel. And my essential country feel that I teach over at the Piano Man Approach is fairly simple. What you're going to do is you're going to take like a chord. We'll just go with a C chord here, a C major. And in the left hand, you're going to be playing, it doesn't have to be octaves, but I like to play octaves in the left hand most of the time. So there's your C's right there. And you're going to be alternating in the left hand between that and the 5 of the chord. We say 5, and we mean the scale degree. So if you take a C major scale, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? And each chord that you play, it's based on what's the scale of that chord. So, but you don't always have to, basically if you just kind of know, how many sharps and flats there are in a particular chord or whatever, you don't always have to think of it quite so granular as the scale degree, but you kind of feel your way to the 5. 1, 5, 1, 5. And the count on it is like this. It's either going to be, if you're playing at a really fast tempo, it'll be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So like on counts 1 and 3. I think more commonly they'll have it phrased so that you're counting it like 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and, or 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So you're on the down beats, and then the back beats are where you're alternating on the 5 comes. So that's what the left hand does in the essential country feel. The right hand, or excuse me, that's not the alternating 5. I told you wrong. You're on the downbeats with the left hand notes. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. The back beats are what you're doing with your right hand. Okay? So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. You're just playing a C chord. Doesn't really matter where you voice it. You can voice it. This is just sort of root position, C, E, G, like so. You could also voice it here, E, G, C. That's first inversion, or you could play second inversion. G, C, E, it's all the same notes. Doesn't really matter. I usually, just for the purposes of these lessons, like to keep it in root inversion. I'm sorry, I got a little frog in my throat, and I can't seem to drink enough water to not be having to clear it from time to time. So I apologize for that being in the video. But anyway, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. All right, so let's start with that. Now, what do we do to make it into this driving country feel? Well, it's pretty simple. We're going to make a very simple adjustment to it. And what we're going to try to do is give it the sense that it sounds sort of like a galloping horse. That's why the kind of cowboy roots come into it. So, you know, chaka, 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 right? Western sounds like a horse galloping off into the sunset in New Mexico or Nevada back in the Wild West, right? So there's two ways you can go about this. One is you can simply 1 and a 2. See, 1 and 2. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a. So you have to split it into 16th notes. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. That's one way you can go about it. And you don't have to do that on every single count. It can just, I think it's most effective to be like on counts 1 and on count 3. Cha-cha, 3, 1 and 2, 3 and a 4, 1 and, see what I'm saying? 1 and a 2 and 3 and a 4 and that kind of contrast between the two, chaka, 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 actually gives it that little bit of space in between the chaka, 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 like that. That little bit of space actually makes them stand out more, maybe give them a little bit more character. Now, there's no hard rules about this, so you can do it on every count. You can do it on all but one count. You can do it as often as you feel like in the moment. You're never doing anything particularly wrong, but I'm just giving you kind of how I tend to do it, which is 1. The alternative to this is, instead of coming down twice on the chord like that, you can toggle it. And when I say toggle it, what I mean is you play the top part of the chord with the top part of your hand, and then play the second part with your thumb. So it's toggle. Like that. And when you get it up to a good tempo, either one of them has a pretty good effect. Could be. Or. The toggle is a little smoother, and the just what I'd say, like the two little staccato notes there, it's a little bit choppier. And both of them can be effective. You kind of have to choose which one you want for the song that you're in. And you might frankly like to do a mixture of both of them in a particular song. And that's fine too. Okay? So that is at the crux of how you actually play this thing. Okay. So let me give you some song examples here of places where this has been used, because there's a lot of well-known songs throughout, as I say, many, many decades. We're going to go all the way back to Gene Autry here in 1939 with Back in the Saddle Again. And because it's kind of cheesier, I'm going to go with the smoother sound of the, as opposed to the choppier one, okay? I'm back in the saddle again, out where a friend is a friend, where the longhorn cattle feed and the lonely Jimson weed, the saddle again, riding the range once more, toting my old 44. We sleep out every night, and the law is only right. I'm back in the saddle again. Okay, and what that does, it certainly, any of these songs could be played with just the traditional sort of what I call the essential country feel, where it's just back in the saddle again. But this gives you a couple of elements. One, it replicates the fact that there was probably in the band, in almost any of these kinds of songs, there's probably some snare drum going on where they're like going doom chicka 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 doom, right? So it gives you that. But also with the acoustic guitar that's so prevalent in country, they're probably not just going chuck 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 chuck. They're probably going chuck 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 with their strum pattern. So this gives you a chance to kind of replicate that element a little bit, those two things that tend to be going on, and that's why we're doing it, because it gives it just a little extra nuance, a little extra character, and does a slightly better job of replicating what was going on. Let's move forward here to 1968. And in 1968, we have Mama Tried by Merle Haggard. And in this case, I'm probably going to go with the choppier one, because this one's got a little bite, a little bit of extra bite to it. First thing I remember knowing, lonely whistle blowing, youngins dream of growing up to ride on a freight train leaving town, not knowing where I'm bound. No one could change my mind, but Mama tried. I turned 21 in prison, doing life without parole. No one could steer me right, but Mama tried, Mama tried, Mama tried to raise me better, but her pleading I denied. Leaves only me to blame, 'cause Mama tried. Okay, works really, really nice for a song like that, because, like I say, the problem when you just go with... It certainly works. It's got all the elements you have to have behind it. But it doesn't give you that pace and that... There's a real excitement in songs like this. There's a more an excited vibe in these songs that we're talking about here, that's very rhythmically based. And like I say, it just kind of goes back to that feeling of being on a horse or being on a freight train, you know, like riding on a train. And you can feel the railroad underneath your, you know, the railroad wheels kind of churning underneath you. And that's what this kind of helps do. And it's a very, very subtle change. But that's the great thing about this, because I want you to take note of how much you can change the feel and the sort of the sonic texture of what you're playing by making such a simple change. You know, I mean, like it's you're barely playing anything different than the essential country feel, and yet it totally changes the vibe of the song to go from I turned 21 in prison doing life without parole. Now listen to this. I turned 21 in prison doing life without parole. No one could steer me right, but Mama tried, Mama tried. It's like it creates urgency, creates excitement. You know, I love how tiny adjustments like that can make such a big difference. Okay, now we're going to take a look at The Gambler by Kenny Rogers from 1978. So that was 1968 that we just did. With Merle Haggard, we've looked at one from 1939, functionally a 40s song, basically. And then we've looked at a 60s song. Here's a 70s song, you know, and it's a little bit slower. Like I say, this doesn't always have to be at the same tempo. It can be at a slower tempo, but it's still that same driving beat. Once he gets... In the opening, it's kind of like a little more subdued, but when they get to the part where he says, so I handed him my bottle, and he drank down my last swallow. Then he bummed a cigarette and asked me for a light, and the night got deathly quiet, and his face lost all expression. If you're gonna play the game, boy, you better learn to play it right. You got to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away, know when to run. You never count your money when you're sitting at the table. There'll be time enough for counting when the dealing's done. In that case, I kind of did a little mixture. I did some of the more kind of smoother ones and some of the choppier ones. So it doesn't really matter. It was just sort of like what felt good in the moment. Sometimes I might do it all choppy. Sometimes I might do it all smooth. There really is no wrong way to go with this sort of thing. Okay. Now we're going to jump forward to the early 90s here, the post-Garth Brooks boom of country music. And I don't know if anyone ever saw the Pure Country movie that George Strait starred in. Well, the opening number was called Heartland, and it's very much in this sort of vein, okay? And it's a little bit slower tempo, but very much a driving beat. When you hear twin fiddles and a steel guitar, listening to the sound of the American heart. And opry music on a Saturday night, smile to your face and a tear to your eye. Sing a song about the heartland, only place that I feel at home. Sing about the way a good man works until the daylight's gone. Sing the rain on the roof on the summer night, when there's still no wrong from a right. Sing a song about the heartland. Sing a song about my life. Same concept. Even though we are now in 1993, like 50 plus years, about 54 years later from Gene Autry, and we're still using the same basic technique. You know, like, it sounds different in the ear because they have, updated instruments, updated amplification, way better recording studios, maybe different instrumentation, all of that kind of stuff. But the underlying rhythmic structure is pretty much the same thing that they were doing. A lot of these things date back. And so the great thing is as you learn these tools, like these rhythm patterns, you are set up to play a variety of music from, every genre and just like every era. It doesn't hem you in because these things are fairly universal and they go all the way to the present day. So we're going to look at one from 2004 now really quick called Suds in the Bucket by Sarah Evans. So now we're all the way to 2004, I guess, what does that put us? About 65 years later, I think, is where that puts us from our starting point of Gene Autry. So let's take a look here. This one's a little more quick tempo again. Okay. Now her daddy's in the kitchen staring out the window, scratching and racking his brains. After 18 years he's up and walk away. Her little ponytail girl grew up to be a woman. Now she's gone in the blink of an eye. She left the suds in the bucket and the clothes hanging out on the line. She left the suds in the bucket and the clothes hanging out on the line. Same thing. And just to prove to you that it doesn't always, even though this is very much a rhythm pattern that I would say identifies with country music, It also is going to show itself in some rock and roll songs that just happen to have sort of a country flavor to them. So here's a really good example from Eric Clapton that you might know from 1977. It's called Lay Down, Sally. Lay down, Sally, rest here in my arms. Don't you think you want someone to talk to? Lay down, Sally, no need to leave so soon. I've been trying all night long just to talk to you. Works like a charm, even though we're not really in the country genre, but we do have country flavoring going on. And then one last example here from kind of rock and roll, kind of a southern rock sounding song, but very much rock and roll. People don't think of this as a country song at all. This is by the Doobie Brothers. Whoa, whoa, listen to the music. Oh, whoa, listen to the music. Oh, whoa, listen to the music all the time. Feel it growing day by day. People getting ready for the news. Some are happy, some are sad. So see how nice that works? Okay, so now you know that. The only other thing I'm going to give you here before we end this video, because I think you've got this tool down, and I hopefully have been able to demonstrate that it's very applicable throughout many, many eras, and that there's a lot of popular songs to choose from in different eras that are going to use this, where this can be a good tool, is when you do have a break in the melody and you kind of need a little bit of just a little bit of a fill, but it's not a very long break. So we're not really talking about playing like a solo. You just need to fill a little space. The thing about this is you never want to get too fancy, because the thing about these kinds of songs is that really what's more on display is the rhythmic excitement of the song more than, like a bunch of crazy virtuoso maneuvers. And so you kind of want to create fill mechanisms, fill tools that in some ways are not too far away from what you're already doing with the rhythm pattern, and you just want to make them maybe slightly a little more interesting. Although you can, like the rhythm pattern itself, when it's just a little gap, does sound okay as a fill, so it can just be, whoa, whoa, listen to the music all the time. See, I didn't do anything other than just play the rhythm pattern, right? And I was just following the bass notes of that song. It's a little more complicated chord-wise than some of the country ones that we were doing, and it works fine. But if you need to, I think toggling is a really, really effective way to do a little bit of space filling. So when I say toggling, as we were talking about before, you just play the top part of the chord here and then toggle with your thumb. And so for me, you might have like, let's say you're playing Good Hearted Woman by Waylon Jennings. A long time forgotten, the dreams that just fell by the way. Okay, so you've got kind of some space there. Way. Now what am I doing there? And then we're right back in. The good life you promised ain't what she's living today. So just rhythm, just little rhythms with syncopations in them, and all I'm doing is I'm already on the chord, and I can just kind of just whatever, right? And you don't have to do anything fancier than the chord you're already playing. A long time forgotten, the dreams that just fell by the way. promised ain't what she's living today. Right? Now, if you want to make it a little more interesting, don't look for more interesting rhythms, because frankly, there's only so many things you can do. It's like you can go da-da-da or diddle-diddle-da or da-da-da-da. You're right. You're going to be in that realm for this, and you don't want to try to get too fancy beyond it. Like I say, otherwise you lose the driving rhythmic feel, which is sort of what this whole thing is about. You really want that on display. But what you can do is make it a little more interesting with the chord that you're playing. And my favorite way to do that is to use we were talking earlier, you've got your 1 and your 5, right? And usually when you're playing a chord, like a major chord, you play 1, 3, 5. Sometimes it's a minor chord and you're playing 1, 3, 5, but it's a minor 3. In all cases, you can play the 2 and the 5 together and toggle to the 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Right? And it just sounds nice. It adds a little bit of dissonance, but not so much that it starts to make it, it's not like, oh my God, resolve it, which sometimes that's a nice thing to do in a song too. But usually with this, we don't have time to resolve it. So you just create like the teensiest bit of dissonance, but not enough that people feel like to be satisfied that you have to have some major release after the tension. It's just long time forgotten, or dreams that fell by the way. And doesn't that sound just slightly more interesting than just the major chord? That's the major chord. Now there's with the 2 in there. Then we're back to just the chord when you're singing. And the good life he promised ain't what she's living today. The nice thing is you're already on the chord, so it's just a matter of toggling just like you would on the chord itself, except you're replacing the 3 with the 2. So it's just your index finger and your pinky instead of your middle finger and your pinky. And it just gives you that little bit of something interesting and special. And this works whether you're on a major chord or a minor chord. Whoa, whoa. It doesn't matter. Major chords and minor chords, you can still use the 2-5 combination. And it's going to sound interesting and good. It's going to sound a little off the beaten path, give you a little extra character that maybe wouldn't be there otherwise. And other than that, everything's cool. So hopefully these are some tips that you can take with you and either start playing some songs that maybe you haven't been playing before, or start enhancing and getting a more desirable result with some of the songs that you're already playing. All right. Thanks for tuning in. We do this every Friday. Please come visit us at pianomanaapproach.com. I have some free goodies for you over there, and you can learn more about my courses and what we do over there. You're always welcome to be part of the community, and I hope I'll see you again next Friday when we drop our next free lesson Friday, and of course the performance content that I like to put out on a regular basis as well. So thanks everybody for joining me. Remember, if you're not having fun when you're making music, you're doing it wrong, and I will see you in the next video, guys. Piano Man Steve signing out. Later.